most 20-year-olds don't care if there's a trans person in Blue's Clues. They do care about the fact that Biden gave them student debt relief. Okay, boys, okay. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for the copium extravaganza? So there is a lot of copium, and I hope you guys link me more. But I want to get through some of my favorite examples of copium. So for those of you who don't know, the Republicans were supposed to have a massive red wave. That didn't materialize. It now is more like a red trickle. It seems to be what everybody's calling it. Historically, during the first term of any presidency, during the midterms, the opposition party does big, gets big W's. That is what happened to Bill Clinton in 1994 when he lost like 50 seats. That's what happened to Obama in 2010 when he lost like 62 seats. That happened to Trump in 2018 when the blue wave came around and they got like 40 to 45 seats. And now the Republicans might pick up like maybe like 1/5 or 1/4 of what the Democrats picked up. Like just barely. Like there's still a chance as we speak right now that the Democrats keep the House. That's unlikely, but there's still a chance. And they took some L's like Lauren Boebert that like they just didn't need to take, but it was just their own incompetence. They took an L with Mehmet Oz, and we know they're probably going to lose the Senate. And so basically, the Democrats held with the blue wall. They might still lose the House by a single vote or two, but this is basically the best case scenario. Generally the best case scenario. Florida was bad, but best case scenario generally. I don't want to get too into specifics. Basically, Democrats did much better than anyone expected. And wouldn't you know it, some people seem to have a problem with the result. That there might be something wrong with how votes are being tabulated. And it just so happens that now the Republicans are losing. Now there's a lot of concerns about election fraud. See, everywhere where Republicans won, I haven't heard a single complaint about election fraud in Florida. I haven't heard a single complaint about any of the major Republican leaders who are pushing election fraud about election fraud in Florida. Is it because Marco Rubio won in Florida? Is it because all these other people won in Florida, like, Ron DeSantis? And so in Florida was the one place the red wave kind of came to. And so now they don't want to challenge that in any way. But hey, there might be a blue wave in Pennsylvania, so that seems fraudulent. Or Carrie Lake might not win, so that seems fraudulent. Anyway, let's look at the first cope shipments, the first election cope shipments we have gotten since 2020. I know many of us, we have seen a shortage in the cope market, and we're trying to wait for a rebound. We've seen a short kind of dip, almost a recession, not a depression, but almost a recession. And now we're seeing the market chugging along again. It's coming along where the cope train is going. Chugga, 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 choo, choo. It is going. So I wanted to show you guys some of the freshest, finest cope farmed here at the Dark Branded campaign. Let's see. So here is a right-wing podcast by the name of The Conservative Daily, which has the byline, by the way, your daily dose of sanity. Let's listen to him.
Still beside myself as I'm sitting here looking at all the things that we're dealing with, and I'm saying to myself, how? I have to look at this and go, Carrie Lake is down by 13%, with 70% of Maricopa reporting.
Told you, Vic.
By the way, can I just say, there's a bunch of ways you could explain this, that outside of fraud. Number one, you could just say Carrie Lake's a bad candidate, or she didn't run a good campaign, or, the pollsters are wrong. There could be a million different scenarios to explain the situation. Since this has been recorded, was Carrie Lake and Hobbs' lead has gotten shorter, and they're within striking distance of each other, and it looks like it's going to be by the wire. Hobbs still seems to have the advantage, but there's a million different explanations you could search for here outside of fraud, and the fact that this is the direction they're about to go, when the election isn't even over yet, they can't even look around to see any of the evidence, just shows that, you know, they were expecting a different night.
Told you they can't let her be governor. She'll investigate.
Did you hear that? Listen to that again. They can't let her be governor. As if they're stopping her from winning the election rightfully.
90% of Maricopa reporting.
Told you they can't let her be governor. She'll investigate. They can't let her have it.
We can see the fraud. We can see the fraud in the machines, Draza. We can see it. We can see it. Yes, mail-in ballots. Yes, 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 yes. The Eric system shares all these.
When you open up a fraudulent machine, a bunch of green smoke comes out. It's like a bunch of little hobgoblins crawl out of the machine. What does he mean he can see the fraud in the machines? What does that even mean? What does he even mean by that? You can see the fraud in the machine. What does that mean? He doesn't elaborate, doesn't expand. What does that even mean? You can see the fraud in the machines.
These people and the fraud of stealing people's identities and putting that in and front loading the machines with the SQL database, which I said you could do. It showed it in Mesa County. You run the database.
Dude, every single time they start talking about this election fraud nonsense, every single time, no matter how hard they try, they end up sounding like Mike Liddell. And this is just another example of it. By the way, I don't have any Mike Liddell clips pulled up. If anybody does, I'd love to see what Mike Liddell said. Now, other Republicans have, had a different conclusion. Some of them have actually touched reality for a moment. And so I wanted to show you a Fox News commentator who actually touched reality, calling this midterm result a searing indictment of the Republican Party. Let's listen.
We have the worst inflation in 4 decades, the worst collapse in real wages in 40 years, the worst crime wave since the 1990s, the worst border crisis in U.S. history. We have Joe Biden, who is the least popular president since Harry Truman, since presidential polling happened, and there wasn't a red wave. That is a searing indictment of the Republican Party. That is a searing indictment of the message that we have been sending to the voters. They looked at all of that and looked at the Republican alternative and said, no thanks. The Republican Party needs to do a really deep introspection look in the mirror right now.
I think for a lot of Republicans, they don't realize that certain things like the child tax credit is actually looked favorably upon by a lot of Nevadans and Pennsylvanians. And for a lot of people, it helped them get by. It slashed child poverty in half. The student debt relief, a lot of people panicking, almost panicking at the fact that Zoomers, my generation, turned out in such high numbers, and they had a demonstrable impact, considering that Zoomers were very, very pro-Democrat, very much in the Democrat category, and they have been voting with the Democrats very well this election. They had a massive impact. A lot of people are shocked by that fact. You've seen a lot of people getting angry, actually, at Zoomers, right? I don't know if you guys saw this. But there was one woman earlier who's talking about, where is it? Where, here it is. Raise the voting age to 21. Where the solution is, oh, we lost an election? Just make it harder to vote. You're seeing so many people coming out. And not just her, I've seen a few others coming out and saying, what about these Gen Z? The fault here, the problem is Gen Z. The problem is we didn't give a good pitch to Gen Z, because we were running on culture war nonsense. I guess, most 20-year-olds don't care if there's a trans person in Blue's Clues. They do care about the fact that Biden gave them student debt relief. I wonder why. Maybe it's because the way you get across to Gen Zers isn't by saying, oh, radical dude, and posting memes, even though, memes do help. It's by offering them policy solutions that benefits their daily lives. Not culture war nonsense. I'm sorry, Matt Walsh is not the voice of a new generation. He's the voice of a generation from Vietnam. And maybe the youngest is the Gulf War. Who knows? But certainly not Gen Z. Where were we? Here we were.
Because this is an absolute disaster for the Republican Party, and we need to turn back. We need to look at who won today. Ron DeSantis, DeWine, these governors, Kemp, Abbott. Look at these governors. This is the path to the future. At electing these radical candidates who ran far behind them has put the Republican Party in a terrible position, and voters have have indicted the Republican Party.
So this right here, he's almost giving it away. But a big contributor to the Republican Party's loss was Donald Trump. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that Donald Trump endorsed lost, but in a lot of these high-profile races, Donald Trump, like, personally interfered to choose primary candidates. Personally interfered. Now, not always it was successful. I mean, not always it failed. Like, J.D. Vance beat Tim Ryan, sadly. I was a big Tim Ryan supporter. But in Pennsylvania, it was a hair split decision that got Dr. Oz the W in the Republican primary. In fact, if it wasn't for Donald Trump's endorsement of Dr. Oz, he would have lost. He would have lost the primary. And a much more moderate candidate would have ended up going up against John Fetterman, somebody probably with a better chance of winning. Now, I don't know if that moderate candidate could have beat John Fetterman, primary, like immediate post-primary Fetterman, but Fetterman going through a stroke? Maybe. A lot more likely than Dr. Oz. But he personally interfered, chose Dr. Oz, his old, reality TV buddy, loses the election. Isn't the only example either. It looks like Kari Lake might lose in Arizona. There's actually decent chance she'll lose in Arizona. The Hobbs. Another person, Donald Trump, got involved, endorsed Kari Lake, was a huge Kari Lake supporter. A lot of people in the Trump faction of the Republican Party see Kari Lake as the future of Trumpism. You listen to Kari Lake speak, she sounds just like Donald Trump. She's almost like basically copying his mannerisms. She's very, 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 very charismatic. And a lot of people, me included, was scared that she was going to sweep in Arizona. Somebody radical, somebody who's an election denier, somebody who's an abortion ban absolutist. Same with her lieutenant governor, by the way. Not lieutenant governor. Same with the Secretary of State candidate, who's going to be running the elections in Arizona, a swing state. Now it looks like she's going to crash. Would a more moderate option have won in the state? Possibly. Exit polls from both Pennsylvania and Arizona seem to indicate that voters thought that both Kari Lake and Mehmet Oz were the radicals in the race. They were more radical than the other option, in like a negative way. And the thing is, Dr. Oz campaigned against Fetterman hard in the idea that he was a radical socialist, and still gets portrayed as the more radical option. Rightly, by the way. But like the Donald Trump slate of candidates did not pull out a bunch of crazy W's. I mean, there was some curb stompings of them too, like with Dan Cox in Maryland, where he flipped the governorship blue. But then you look over to Ron DeSantis. If the red wave touched anywhere, it was Florida. It hit the shores of the peninsula. I mean, Charlie Crist got blown out. Val Demings got blown out. Miami seems to be red. The Republicans are reaping the rewards of a lot of investment in Florida, and the Democrats just didn't hustle this election for Florida. Not that I think I don't know how much we could have really done to prevent this result in the immediate past either. This is something that's going to take a lot of long-term investment. There's a lot of people even talking about Florida no longer being a swing state. That Florida might just be a red state. I mean, Bernie Sanders, when he was going to get the nomination, he just said he wasn't even going to campaign really in Florida. He wasn't going to try for it. He was going to use an alternative path. Just kind of, you're seeing more and more Democrats saying, give up on Florida, invest in other locations. Ron DeSantis won double digits. He looks golden right now. He is offering, very obviously, an alternative path for the Republican Party moving forward. And you're seeing Donald Trump getting ready, digging up dirt on Ron DeSantis, trying to announce before Ron DeSantis that he's running for president. His announcement's coming on November 15th. There's rumors that Donald Trump has dug up dirt on Ron DeSantis sleeping with strippers and engaging in spank play, like really wild stuff coming out. That civil war is coming. And it seems like a lot of the more strategically minded Republicans, or the ones maybe that are just more close in touch with reality, are moving over to the DeSantis side because they know that DeSantis would probably have a better chance of winning in 2024. And DeSantis would probably choose less wacky candidates. But it's going to be a vicious primary. Don't expect Donald Trump to give up too easily. But woof, it's going to be vicious. This was Charlie Kirk's chat midstream. Here's a picture of it. Just complete blue wave. Blue wave, blue wave, blue wave all around. Here's Charlie Kirk on screen. If you wanted to see how his day was going, not well is the answer. Donald Trump immediately after the election on Truth Social was like celebrating, going like, woohoo, yay, look at that. We won, woohoo, this is a big victory. And then he releases this email. Friend, I have an exciting announcement that I can't wait to share with you on November 15th. I'm going to announce something huge at Mar-a-Lago, and I want you to be there. Enter here. All you have to do is contribute $5 or more, and you'll automatically be entered to be the very first person to meet me at Mar-a-Lago after my big announcement. The offer is exclusive to my most loyal supporters like you, so don't share this with anyone else. Silly, by the way. Only to my most loyal supporters. Don't share this with anybody else. Kind of manipulative. But I mean, that's campaigning. But he's not acknowledging the reality of what happened with his candidates, this campaign, or the fact that there just wasn't a red wave. But he is getting that announcement ready. November 15th, and trying to scrape up as much funds as he can, because that's another criticism Donald Trump has gotten, that he hasn't just shared the love. He has not been sharing his money for these primary races as much as he should be. Anyway, it's going to be a vicious, vicious primary, and Trump has already kind of gotten in the trench. I don't know if you guys saw, but Trump already came up with a nickname for Ron DeSantis as well. Ron DeSanctimonious. He said it during a recent campaign stop. So, he's already gotten the trench. And one last thing, and this is the happiest piece of cope that I can report today. Trump is livid and screaming at everyone after last night's disappointing midterm results for the GOP. The advisor went on to say, he went on to slam the former president's handpicked contenders. They were all bad candidates. Candidates matter, the advisor said. We've seen Ben Shapiro come out and say something very similar, that our candidates were bad. They've had a candidate quality issue. And I will say, Herschel Walker, not much of a, he's not working with much. Like once the election started, once you've chosen your candidate, there's only so much certain candidates can do. And Herschel Walker can't do a lot when it comes to getting up there and making an argument. And so they're not wrong that the candidate quality this election was pretty bad, and Donald Trump certainly made it worse. And the idea of Trump just getting so mad, and probably everybody else around him, like getting mad at Dr. Oz, getting mad, and not him for not having such bad judgment when it came to picking these candidates, is pretty funny. And if you think I'm lying, somebody just linked this in chat. This is from Fox News. Trump furious over Oz losing in Pennsylvania. Blames wife Melania for endorsement. According to a report, former President Donald Trump was furious Wednesday over the disappointing showing by Republicans nationally, and blames people in particular who advised him to back Dr. Mehmet Oz in the Senate race, including the former president's wife, Melania. Oz went down in defeat to Pennsylvania Democrat John Fetterman in the state's closely watched Senate contest, a bruising loss for Republicans trying to win back a Senate majority. Fetterman's win allowed Democrats to pick up a seat held by retiring Senator Patrick Toomey. New York Times reporter Maggie Haberman, known for access to Trump and his orbit, tweeted Wednesday, Trump is indeed furious this morning, particularly about Mehmet Oz, and is blaming everyone who advised him to back Oz, including his wife, describing it as not her best decision, according to people close to him. There are people pushing Trump to reschedule his announcement next week, and several Republicans have texted asking whether he will, but it's risky and would be acknowledging he's wounded by yesterday, something that some of his advisor insist is not the case, she added. By the way, Donald Trump, if there's anything he can't do right now, honestly, if he wants to be president, is show weakness. I actually agree that either he just says, I'm done, I'm not running, or he says, go big, go home, we're going now, boys, let's do this, and he runs and just says some controversial stuff and distracts everybody with himself, or just whatever he needs to do. You get what I'm saying? It's worth remembering that Trump is a grown man who endorsed Oz over the objection of some of the people closest to him, and instead went beyond just endorsing and attacking, and attacked David McCormick from the stage at a rally. David McCormick was basically the opponent, the Republican primary opponent that Dr. Oz had. Trump-backed candidates in critical races across the country lost or lagged behind other Republicans in their states, and pundits across the spectrum have said Trump had a brutal night for his political brand. Anyway, my God, man. My God. The biggest cope of all. Cope of the former president of the United States of America. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.